Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you all for joining the webinar today. We are going to give it a couple minutes for all the attendees to join in, and then we'll get started. But thank you for attending today's webinar. And now that we're live, we'll just take a quick check. Matt and Ben, can both of you hear me?
I can.
I can.
All right, and we can hear you. So this is success. Everything's right on track. Again, for those that are attending, we will be starting in just a moment. We're allowing a couple minutes for people to join in before we get started. It's about 12:01 here Central Time. We'll probably get started right about 12:03.
Depends on how you gauge success, Ben, right?
That's exactly right. Today, technology working is a win. I always like that. And we see everybody loading in here, so thank you for attending again. If you're just arriving, we'll get started in about a minute or two. We're just allowing everybody to join the presentation. Looks like a nice turnout, so this is looking really positive for everybody. We'll get started in just a minute. Nice thing about a webinar is that we don't have to deal with all the weather going on across the U.S. So this is a great way to keep attendance high. This is positive.
Our friends up in Minnesota are getting hammered again today.
Yeah, it seems to be that way across the country.
They delayed schools in Denver today because it's cold and there's 1 inch of snow on the ground. It was very upsetting.
See, it's the way they handle the Denver area is very different than the slopes up north, up in the mountains. So
that's right, no doubt. Everyone's a little soft down here in the valley.
Yeah, right. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 12:03. Thank you all for attending today's webinar. It is 2023 Employee Trends and Tips, Rewards, Recognition, and Engagement. Thank you all for signing up and joining us today. Today we'll be discussing 7 key trends that will continue to shape the workplace engagement in 2023 and beyond. We all know it takes innovative strategies, rewards, recognition, and engagement. And our speakers today will provide actionable tips, insights to support your workforce. Now, just a little bit about our 2 speakers today. Matt Willis is Senior VP of Advantage Club, guiding organizations including Accenture, Target, Concentrix, and many more as they deploy innovative engagement strategies. Prior to Advantage Club, Matt led multiple divisions of CareerBuilder and Broadbean Technology to support talent acquisition. He's a graduate of the University of Colorado Law School and Northwestern University Kellogg School of Business. Matt has focused his extensive career on enabling human resources to execute at a strategic level. Matt, thank you very much for joining us today.
You bet.
Ben Jablow is currently VP of Business Development at Postal.com. Ben is an experienced tech executive, having led multiple product organizations, built alliances and channel operations, and managed sales organizations. At Postal, Ben oversees corporate development, alliances, and strategic initiatives. Ben also spent 16 years at CareerBuilder, developing and growing multiple products, including niche websites. He has built and launched their partnerships and channel programs over at CareerBuilder. Previously, Ben was Chief Revenue Officer at Hunt Club, a company based in Chicago, and sits on multiple startup boards. Ben, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Just as a couple points of order. First, we will have Q&A at the end of today's presentation, but don't hesitate to ask your questions throughout the course of the conversation in the chat, and we'll make sure all of those get addressed throughout the conversation. In addition, something that's cool is we will record this and we will send you the recording following the event. And most importantly, for those of you that stay to the end of the presentation or through the first 30 minutes, we will be putting in the chat a special award to be able to get cookies delivered to the address of your choice. And so we really value you engaging with us today, being part of today's presentation. And at this point, I will turn it over to Matt and Ben to take the presentation, share a little bit about themselves and their company.
That's great. Do we get some of those chocolates as well, Ben?
Sure, man.
Okay.
Everybody.
Looking
chocolate for everybody.
Great. So let's just give you a quick roadmap because we want to maximize everyone's ROI and we also want to make this pretty fun. So the idea behind this is there's a lot of noise around engagement. So we're trying to pick a few stats, a few tips, and some questions out there that we can learn from one another and what's going on as of February 2023. My apologies up front. This is not a diverse panel. We like to have a diverse panel. Our Chief Operating Officer is unavailable to join today. She's in a board meeting and she is a fantastic speaker. Her name is Smitty, but hopefully you can catch her at a later date. Secondly, the roadmap is we're going to go through a couple stats on what we're seeing as a result of the recession that is changing some stats here as of February. Then we're going to go right into 7 tips. We're going to have kind of questions for the group and then a few tips along the way. So that's the roadmap. That said, the disclaimer is if you are with a small organization, large organization, governmental, there's a whole bunch of questions that are going to be unique to you. And if you don't get those answered, that's what this is for. Hit us up later. We have our emails available after. So we're anxious to talk to you about specifics later on. All right, so next slide. All right, so we talked about what we're going to do. Next slide. Great. So employee experience. I think 1 or 2 colleagues from EY are here today. This is from their human development, capital development team. And as a result of the pandemic, and in addition to just the trend pre-pandemic, employee experience is very, very hot. So what this is showing is, hey, over the next 2 years, if you ask the executive suite, is employment experience important? Used to be 9% and then 40% somewhat. Now it's very important. So it's on the minds of the executive suite as well as the entire organization. Next slide. Great. Now here's the twist. So all of us on this line, and I've seen some of the attendees, hey, we're dealing with people. Largely, a lot of folks on this line are in and around human resources operation, a bunch of different functions, but we see and hear and breathe people. We get this. We have heard about disengagement over the last 2 years. We have seen the trends in talent acquisition. It is very difficult to hire people, especially in particular industries. So we've heard about career cushioning and the Great Recession and silent quitting. All of that remains today. The twist is today we're hearing about layoffs. So as recent as February 7th, this is from Randstad World Poll, hey, we've got some concern out there. So we got 52% of people that are concerned how the macroeconomics are going to affect their job. We've got 43% of our 18 to 24 workforce that are saying, hey, I am concerned about losing my job. So we've got 2 functions going on. Hey, this whole idea of working from home is difficult, hybrid is difficult, I want more. But also, hey, we're starting to see some security concerns. So that's the setting today. Next slide. Okay, so trend 1, and I think we've got a little background noise there, Ben Goldberg. I don't know if you can hear that, maybe a little. Trend 1, prioritizing employee engagement. So if we go to next slide, what are we seeing out there? So here's the trend. This is a trend that we're seeing multiple different data points for this. We used to see employment survey satisfaction score. That was pretty prevalent over the past decade. We would also see turnover rates and attendance rates. Those are always important metric scores as it relates to HR function. What we are now seeing is new metrics that are bubbling up. And the tip is, hey, create those metrics that work for you and gain you the budget and help you to enforce the engagement strategy you're looking at. So as an example, we've always had net promoter scores for our marketing department. Will someone else recommend your product or service? Now we're seeing more attention on employee promoter scores, meaning, hey, if I ask someone, will they work for your company? Would you refer them? Employer scores. We're seeing engagement surveys, and then we're seeing a deeper level of engagement surveys done differently and informal surveys. So we're looking at more different metrics that are bubbling to the top as a result of these kind of talent acquisition post-pandemic trends. Next slide. Okay, the other piece of 2023 trends that we're seeing, and I'll get to my friend Ben here, is along with the metrics, we're seeing more technology. So no surprise to anyone on this call, post-pandemic, the stats were, hey, the last 25 years, we've seen little or no innovation in HR technology. Come 2020, we have seen a massive boom in terms of venture capital and new products that are disrupting the old employee cycle and the old technologies out there. So if you show next slide. So the overwhelming amount of new technologies in and around people is really phenomenal. So what we have today is not just employee satisfaction, we have an ATS, we have an HRIS system. Now, many of us on this call have all sorts of tech platforms, and those platforms are enabling more information around how the employees are engaged, how they're onboarded, how is the leadership training, all of those things. We're seeing that trend continue. And now we're seeing, well, how do we simplify? So, Ben, I'm going to go to you and then see what you're seeing in that space. And then we have a question for our team, for our audience here.
I think what's interesting is a lot of the software that used to be focused in one area, so whether that's sales, whether that's marketing, whether that's HR, now oftentimes can crawl into other spaces. And I think we see that in rewards and recognition, right? I think that now, and I think that's something everybody on the call needs to be conscientious of. Not only does rewards and recognition now come out of the HR budget, it can expand to sales and it can expand to marketing. I see a lot of companies leveraging the same tools they use for recognition internally for their employees for advocacy externally. So whether it's a tool like Advantage Club, whether it's a tool like Postal, on our side, Postal's being used for people ops use cases. It's also being used generally with sales and marketing, trying to send things to people to elicit a different response than they've gotten in the past. And that's really prevalent in the space right now. So I think what's going on from a tech standpoint will impact everybody that's listening to this call and that's kind of approaching this from an HR perspective. There might be other ways to elicit budget. There might be other ways to bring in other groups to tools that you hadn't thought about doing that in the past.
Great. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah.
Trend 3, hearing employees. So if we go to the next slide, what does hearing employees mean? Well, we have seen, again, along with this tech implosion, more surveys, better surveys, more ways to reach out to employees. And the first thing that has popped up is this disconnect. What's the disconnect? So if we talk to, depending on the survey and who we talk to, 90% of business indicate they recognize their employees. So if you go talk to some manager and employee, of course we recognize our employees. But if you really dig down, and if we can get the information at the front lines, 40% in the same survey are saying, hey, they don't feel they've been adequately recognized. And 65% of those people say they haven't received any recognition in the past year. So it depends on who is responding and what are we hearing. Now, with the hybrid model, it's even harder, right? And that's a whole topic that we've all been going through. How does that affect engagement? It affects it tremendously. And how do we get good feedback from the front lines? It's not going to be just a survey. There are other methods that we can look at to get that information. So if we look at the next slide.
Hey, Matt, there's one question that came in that might be something you'd want to add into this.
Sure.
One question I got directly was, what are you seeing regarding best reporting of engagement? So I saw the statistics there, but what tools are being used for reporting on that? If you could address that as well.
Sure. Ben, you want me to take a stab first? Yeah. So what we're seeing is it's very difficult to tie in. It's a great question. How do you tie in turnover to an engagement tool? How do you tie in turnover and performance to rewards and recognition, right? I have used, and I've stole this from another speaker that said, hey, it's the TAC method, TAC. So what tools do we see out there? There's various tools, and I don't think the tool necessarily matters. There's nothing that's going to say turnover, this is our method to decrease turnover. There's too many factors related to turnover. But every time you do a new initiative or a new technology, do three things. One is tie back to an executive number, right? So if it's turnover that is important, then you're going to tie back and say, hey, we're going to launch a new rewards and recognition software, and this is what we're going to do starting at March 1st. What is the number on the turnover at that point in time? Let's tie it back to the engagement. Let's monitor that over 6 and 9 months. The other thing is anchoring. And the way you can do the anchoring is you can say, hey, if we have an ESAT score, at 20%, and our turnover rate is at 20%, not only are we going to tie it back, but we're going to start at 20%. That's where we were. And then we go forward. And then we see competitors. So there's no quick answer to, what tools do we see being used? We see more metrics. We see more numbers being used. But I think the successful organizations are tying back the importance of engagement, the importance of recognition, right? In terms of, hey, this is a direct correlation to this number, your turnover number, to performance, to this number, and then we track it. So I think that's the best way I've seen the big organizations handle that. Anything else there, Ben?
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think it's harder now than it's ever been because a lot of companies are, a lot of people are working remotely. So doing different things than have been done in the past are super important. Making sure that your employees know that you appreciate them. Just doing little things go a long way. If that might be sending a shirt to your employees, it might be doing a virtual event. It could be anything, but just making sure that your employees understand that it is important to you. And getting as much feedback from them as possible is hugely significant in this current day and age.
Right. So if we go to the next slide, an example of a survey that was done, this is from the AMA, employee ranking. So if we ask what's important, recognition, credit, job well done has been shooting up in the post-pandemic world. But if you look at employees, that becomes number one. Now, pay is always up there. We all know that. That's always going to be high. But if you ask the supervisors, big disconnect. So if we're breaking out the surveys, it's not only by the questions you're asking, it's who are you asking in the organization? And we see that disconnect. Next slide. I'll let you all read this. 10th year in a row. Employee satisfaction survey morale is low. Managers' bonuses are linked to the results. You can be sure there'll be big changes to the survey, right? Next slide. Okay, trend 4, intentional engagement. All right, what do we see in terms of intentional engagement? And here we're getting to some of the meat and potatoes. What we're seeing, it's based on employee needs. So if we, next slide. All right, so these are the growing predictors of job satisfaction. And where did this slide come from? This is a compilation of about 4 or 5 big data sets, SHRM, a couple staffing firms, Gallup, et cetera. And what we're seeing is the old predictors of satisfaction have changed. So the new predictors of satisfaction are based on what employees are telling us circa 2023. Flexibility, recognition, responsibility, opportunity for growth, sense of belonging, and the belief in the company, product, or service. What's new? What's new is a higher value on that recognition, a higher value on the sense of belonging. Where we're stuck with in the HR world and in the tech world is, how do you meld sense of belonging? I want the community. I want that recognition with also, hey, I want to work from home and I want flexible hours. So we've got to craft a way that melds those predictors of satisfaction. Next slide. All right, if we go to Maslow's hierarchy needs, a lot of people have seen this. What we find is, hey, if we're offering the bare minimum today, then we're getting disengaged employees. We offer, hey, we got you a salary, you're a part-time employee, independent contractor, they're going to be disengaged. If we move that up, we're going to offer you some benefits, and you have the company email and there's a couple of communications, still pretty disengaged. If we move up to that belonging sense, that's where we see the shift. So we see folks that are starting to, hey, there is some opportunities to get engaged, or there's some recognition. And then as we move down that line, we get to where we have highly engaged employees. What is a highly engaged employee? Productive employee. High employee promoter score, more likely to be around. And that's what we're trying to do. So next slide. All right, so this is the kicker. So what is the new age employee checklist? This is the pro tip. The new age has got to be, hey, we're looking for culture. Across lines, across geographies, across experience level. Culture is very, very important, especially in this flexible market. Flexibility is high, autonomy, growth opportunities, purpose, and recognition. So this comes out of hearing employees, and then let's figure out what are the needs to define that rewards recognition program. Ben, thoughts on what you're seeing and hearing out there?
No, I think that's right. And, the difficult thing is, again, when everybody's not at the office, maintaining that culture is really difficult. And that's where some of these tools come into play. But it's not as easy, as you all know, as it used to be. And making sure that you're constantly checking on that culture is more important than it's ever been.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move to the next slide.
Matt, a real quick question that came in from some of the attendees. The question came from Nabel, and I hope I got that pronunciated right. How do you translate results from surveys into meaningful actionable implementations? So I'll state it again. How do you translate results from surveys into meaningful actionable implementation is the word. So how do you apply the results of surveys into an organization might be another way to say it. Annabelle, I hope I didn't butcher that for you.
It's a loaded question for you, Matt.
Yeah, well, I was going to see if you wanted to jump first.
I was going to say, I think you went to Ben. No, I'm kidding.
Terrific answer. No. Terrific question. We get this all the time. I think the first is, what survey are you using? Because that's important. And what's the purpose of the survey? And who did the survey go out to? So the first question is, okay, why are we using the survey? What's the purpose of that survey? And then depending on those questions, because we've seen a huge expansion in the types of questions and where it's going, then we're going to find out some good data, and we're going to say, hey, this company, people want more pay, they want more flexibility, they want more training, they want to see their colleagues more, they want more fun culture. Okay, then what? So then we say, okay, these are our actionable items. And on that score, if you had a 1 through 5, we're going to take that and say our goal this year is to move that from 5 to 7. And how are we going to do that? Well, we've got 3 actionable ways to do that. Number 1, here's what our competitors are doing, where we're seeing results. Here's what the data is suggesting we can move those numbers. And here are some things we can do. That's the good stuff. And then we get into the specifics. And the way I have seen a couple of companies approach it is, okay, we all know we need more engagement. Now what? And then we get a whiteboard and we see an explosion of coffee chats. We see executives involved with book clubs. We see communities. And what do I mean by communities? Employee resource groups. And if you aren't big enough and don't know what employee resource group is, you can create a little community that's bottom up, not top down. So of course, diversity communities, but beyond that, we see breakouts of cycling clubs, photography clubs, getting people together. And our job is just to create that environment where that's enabled, no matter if you work from home or otherwise. So we see the link at what is the number. And if there's not a clear number, you can create the number. Here is what we're going to peg as our anchor. And then we implement from there. So that's kind of what we've been seeing.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that, Matt, is like you mentioned that it can come from the bottom up, which I totally agree with, but there needs to be commitment from the top down. And without the top down commitment, it makes it very difficult to do the things from bottom up. So making sure you have that commitment from leadership is really important.
And thanks to both of you. A follow-on question that came from another team member here is, what else beyond surveys is being considered by organizations today?
To that terrific question, we are seeing another explosion in different methods of getting feedback. So examples of that are management by walking around. That was the old philosophy in the 80s, where the CEO used to actually go down to the dock and they would make the rounds and ask people. Sometimes scary proposition depending on who they're talking with. But the new way of that is, hey, the CEO is involved in the coffee chats, and the coffee chats are sporadic and have 5 different people from 5 different divisions. So we're seeing coffee chats. We're seeing employee mandatory monthly chats at some organizations. And the chats can be not related to performance. It's just a chat. It's a professional development chat. And the communities, lots of these communities. So we're creating the environment for organizations, cross-culture and otherwise, to elicit that feedback. So I think that the channels have increased. The managers, the peer-to-peer, the anonymous employee resource groups, all these communities, in addition to that employee survey. And then you take a net score. That's really a sentiment score. It's not just satisfaction. What's our pulse this month? So even if you're a small organization, you can tweak these, and you can tweak it by the frequency and the number of ways you're getting that communication.
Can you imagine if you had those tools, Matt, when you were working down by the docks?
Yes, or the CEO ever visited me. Right.
That's right.
Okay. Next trend. So let's talk about rewards. And the reason we're throwing in rewards is is an important component of this. So let's go to the next slide. And I was frankly thrown back on the idea of rewards. Although I've been around the HR space for 25 years, my thought on rewards was always, hey, it's perks, it's anniversary gifts, that's rewards. And as it turns out, what we're seeing is really another big movement into more and more types of rewards. And we're seeing the reason is statistically, just the science of it is, hey, people feel that appreciation when it's tied to a reward. All right. So it's 3x the appreciation, meaning, hey, I got a service award. I was Employee of the Month, a year and a half ago in my division, in my little department. However, if I get a certificate along with that, or a $20 gift certificate to Amazon or Starbucks, I remember that 3x. That means a lot more to me. So the importance of that appreciation goes up dramatically with rewards. So what are the 6 things? Motivation, appreciation, productivity, and then how we give those out we'll get into. But all of those lend to we're seeing more and different rewards and how we're seeing that change. And Ben can add on and just changes.
Yeah, no, look, I think it's also important. We talked about earlier how people are motivated in different ways. And being able to provide more flexibility and choice in regards to what those rewards are is a pretty big deal. So, whether it's, not always sending gift cards, just providing opportunities for the recipients to choose what type of reward to motivate them is really important.
That's a perfect segue. So let's go to the next slide. So I think as Ben just put it, hey, what's out used to be in the office. So the physical rewards they're on the office. Those have gone away. The gym memberships, the in-office perk. What are we seeing? That digital flexibility, rewards, reward points to go to whatever the employee wants or needs. The wellness points, the digital flexible, all sorts of e-certificates, online games, and communities. That's the difference. Next slide. I think the other thing we see just in terms of rewards 2023, lots more opportunities. And what do I mean by this? We always have the long service awards, anniversaries, some birthdays, depending on the organization and the department and division. But we're seeing more activity-driven and celebratory gifting. What do I mean by that? We're seeing creation of new events for engagement. As an example, an organization I was involved with, one of their core values at the organization is giving, giving back. So they have for a month-long charity giving event. And how did they administer this? Well, what they did is they had a sales group involved, they had service group involved, ops group involved. They did the thermometer and just said, hey, our goal is 200 hours, but you do whatever charity you want. The only hook is you got to take a picture when you're out there doing your volunteering. So all of a sudden it became 2 different incentive contests, and we were giving $20 gift cards to 1, 2, and 3. Hey, for those that were doing the hours. And then it was a team event and an individual event, all to give back, but also the pictures. So the picture of the woman in Florida working on the, doing the horse whispering, that wins the award over here. And then we've got all this. So all of a sudden you've got this 3-4 different ways of doing rewards that are aligned with this neat event, that are aligned with your cultural values. So we're seeing new creative ways to incentivize that engagement. And then we're tagging on a bit of a reward. And there's a big incentive. It doesn't have to be a huge dollar reward, but that physical act or that cap or that hat, that provides some motivation. And Ben, what else are you seeing across all your companies?
No, I love that. I love, being able to easily give to charity regardless of what is ultimately offered to you, right? Always having the option to provide either money to charity or something to charity, time, effort. I love that. That's huge. And people love that as well. So no, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think being able to recognize people not only for these kind of common things that they often get recognized for, but making sure you're recognizing them for things that they're not expecting. And I'm not saying going overboard with this. I'm just saying occasionally making sure you're calling out somebody for doing something that they didn't even realize that they did, but they did it really well. Just making sure you're recognizing for things that are just kind of, outside of the standard scope is really important.
One other thing we're seeing is the allocation of points to managers that they didn't have prior. So in Q1, you're allocated 200 points, dollar for dollar, to give out to your employees, no more than $10, and it has to be for something related to one of our 6 values, and that you give that out and we celebrate that. So it is a small act of kindness that is done between peer-to-peer or someone else, and that we reward that action. So, and then that increases in the quarter. So we're seeing more opportunities out there for rewards. All right, next slide. Okay, I think the other thing that's interesting is this idea of impactful rewarding. So if we go to the next slide. Employee of the month is Tina for all the various work she does. You have stripped this award of its meaning by showing that you don't even know what my job is. It's as if you never listened to anything I said. You're welcome. So that, we'll go to the next slide. So as the cartoon illustrates, right? We used to have rewards and it would be out there, hey, for 5-year and 10-year and whatever. Were people excited about those rewards? Sure, I got an award, but is there other rewards out there that I would be more excited about? Now, this has a lot to do with company culture. So small organizations, family-owned, large multinational divisions, there's a lot of considerations to think about. Now we know rewards are really important today. How we give them out is very important as well. So, hey, what incentives or culture already exists, and should you attach a reward? We don't want to all of a sudden start giving out trophies, right, for doing your job. but if it's something exceptional and it drives some future behavior and you get buy-in from your peers, that's a great reward incentive. And there should be flexibility with reward when possible. And are you celebrating it? So the big change we're seeing, and we've got 1,000 large clients, 100 different companies. We got 2.8 million users at Advantage Club. What we're seeing is how the reward's given. So the reward has changed, but the reward is celebrated, and then all of a sudden people can add on. Service of the month, it was given to Tristan. All of a sudden you see the claps, and all of a sudden, yeah, Tristan helped me again, last month, etc. That act of giving along with the rewards is really powerful. So that's what we're seeing. Okay, next slide. Okay, anything else, Ben, on the trends?
No, I think you nailed it.
Okay. 7 is very simple. Now's the time. We've given this is the new age employee checklist. That's there for you. And what do we know? Well, we know common sense, right? You either change and we embrace the engagement, we embrace the recognition, we embrace the rewards, or in the alternative, our employees, and we know 41% to 81% are either actively looking or passively looking for another job. They're gone. They have other options. Culture is a major driver today, whether or not you're hybrid, whether you work from home or elsewhere. The technology can support these activities to provide this engagement culture. In the alternative, you're going to be in trouble. Now, adopting this engagement culture, 2.5x, 3x, employee satisfaction, employee engagement, sense of belonging, that's what comes from going forward. So I think this is the summary of this is, hey, these are the action steps. We're seeing a big influx in engagement. We're seeing a big influx in the rewards. We're thinking strategically about how we tie them to our metrics up top, and then we're launching, and then we're tying it to those metrics, and ultimately we're answering, hey, what our employees need. It's that sense of belonging, opportunities to have that sense of community, although we may not be all working together. So with that, those are my closing comments. Ben, anything from you?
No, I think one of the things that we're also seeing that we didn't really hit on, that's a little bit kind of outside of this, is just the ability to also integrate your tools to make this as simple as possible on you all that are listening to this conversation now, right? Being able to set it up so that when a new hire comes on board, they're automatically sent a new hire package. Maybe at day 90 they're sent something different, but just setting it up so that there's enough automation to make your lives easier, so that you guys aren't the ones that are doing this for everybody that deserves to be recognized.
A question just came in for both of you. I think this one is maybe timely here. How do you cost justify a rewards program?
You want to go first there, Ben?
Look, I mean, for me, it's the idea of people first. I think that, from a justification standpoint, if I'm getting more out of my employees, if my employees are happy, the business is going to, it's going to move faster. It's going to be more successful. So to me, it's a huge part of the business, and it needs to be a big part of the business, regardless of size.
Yeah, I would echo that, and I would say, take what matters most to the CFO, CEO, whoever you're grabbing budget from, and typically it's turnover, or typically it's performance, and you say, look, cost of an average employee to replace today is somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,500 just on the talent acquisition side, and those new employees, it takes 6 months for them to be productive. So for the cost of, hey, 5 employees, 25 grand, here's what we can do. And I'll tell you the 3X that we're going to get on that ROI of investing. So anchor it with, hey, let's show you what we're doing, and then use some competitors out there. This is what our employees want. You throw in those questions on the survey. How are you incentivized by experiences, by rewards, by gift cards, et cetera, and tie that in. And I think that's what becomes real effective.
Let me add a little more to that, Matt. I talked about this at the beginning of the conversation. I think it's super important now, and I know that budgets are tight. And I know that, especially in people ops, budgets are tight. Partner with sales and marketing. Not only is it going to be significantly important to them and their people, but they can also often use a lot of these tools for clients, right? They might be able to, advocacy is a big deal. Maybe a client offers to provide a referral to a prospect. You can use a lot of these tools that way as well. And I think thinking about it kind of across orgs is super important and will be super beneficial if this is important to you.
Yeah, last quick one on that is just pure costs. I think people take on rewards program and think, oh my gosh, I've got to manage it, and then I've got to allocate money, and I've got to do this. Today, ourselves and others do everything for you, and it's dollars per employee per month. So it's a very cost-effective way, just in terms of cost savings, to create this new kind of rewards and recognition program. So that's another angle on the cost savings and the big upside of using it.
Thank you both. I'm getting questions coming in, so I'm going to start listing some questions that I'm seeing come through the chat. If you have questions for the audience, please feel free to message me or put them in the chat, and we'll get those addressed. The question is fairly timely based on your cost question there. This question is more around technology. It says, what technologies are you seeing being used for engagement today?
Well, there's what there is about.
Club and Postal.
Yeah, there's about 50 out there. There's about 50 out there that say engagement tools. So let's start there. Salesforce is an engagement tool. You can put badges in and give out to folks. So I think the first question is, what do we mean by engagement? That's a whole subject for a much longer conversation. But generally, getting people engaged, there are different niches. So there is performance tools in terms of sending out different surveys and getting different information. There's performance management, there's learning tools, all of which I think there's at least 10, 20 companies in all of those little niche areas. I think the way to think about it is, hey, start with what is engagement that you are defining as engagement. And if you want to set up communities and engagement, what is a technology that is very easy to integrate? So it's not creating some new sign-on for you and some new Hue implementation, and it bolsters what you're doing. I think that's the better way to think about it. There's a ton of engagement tools, but what we're seeing is or at least our customers are coming to us. They have a lot of tools in a lot of these spaces, but they just want someone that's going to create communities and rewards, that easy appreciation within MS Teams and within an app on mobile. So I think, that's how I would approach that. There's a ton because all of the big ATS and HRSs say there's some engagement. You just need to question what that is engagement, but there's a lot of good tools out there that are emerging.
Yeah, no, I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I think to Matt's point, it's not only you've engagement across different functions of the business, sales engagement, marketing engagement. There are tools for everything. What I would say, and you can kind of see this as a theme throughout the conversation, finding a tool that you can utilize in multiple different ways that, as Matt alluded to, easily integrates. Those are the things to look for, and those are the things that will make your lives easier.
Well, very good. That takes us through the questions that have been asked. Any final comments, Matt or Ben, before I close us out here?
Did you get the link, Benji? Did you get the link with the Brigadeiros, which are probably the greatest chocolate ever made?
I did post the chocolates out on the chat for people, so they're able to take advantage of that. If not, if for some reason you're having trouble getting that, I will make sure that that's emailed off to everybody that stayed on for the entire presentation. So please feel free to log into the link and grab your chocolates. If you're not getting it, please let me know and I'll make sure we get that out to everybody, but it was posted.
Yeah, don't do a group send, Ben, but yeah, if somebody didn't get it, just send Ben and he'll send Ben a note and he'll send it to you directly.
All right,
but enjoy those and let me know how they are.
Love it. And if you have individual questions, we'd be happy to answer any or all the above. Appreciate you all joining today.
Yeah, thank you all for taking time. As mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we will be sending a recording of this to everybody that signed up and attended. And thank you very much for joining today's webinar. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you.
Thanks all.